know what? This is your episode. You do the intro.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. Hello, welcome to PoliSciFi. I am Cody, starting the episode now, which is weird. I don't think I've ever done an intro. So, I guess I should preface this episode with a question for you, Kyle. If you were currently starting to do the Purge, what would your ideal crime be?
See, this is a good one. Yeah, this is always because that's the thing. Like, you can't do anything that's gonna last, but you gotta do something that you can get in the moment. And I don't know. This would have been an easier answer, but I bought my car. I bought a new car yesterday, so that's that would have been the thing I would have said 2 days ago. Just steal the car. That would have made things much easier.
Well, I mean, you could steal a lot of things. I mean, you could technically break into a bank if it wasn't. I'm gonna assume probably locked down as massively as possible as anything else.
I mean, in the
on Purge night, right?
In the second, I think in the second Purge movie, they do say that they haul all the bank money outside of into like a secure location on Purge night, so the banks are empty.
Yeah, but one of the Purge movies has somebody trying to steal an ATM movie or ATM machine. So I don't think all money is locked down as well. But at that point in time, it's a victimless crime because at that point in time, everything's under something called Purge insurance.
Yeah,
as seen in the second film. If you haven't figured out, we are talking about the Purge today, and the semantics around the Purge. This actually stems from, I think it was the second season of the Purge TV film, which Kyle hasn't seen. And I also didn't really get into the second season. I watched the first season. I didn't get into the second season of the television show. But in the second season, you can see a lot of the innards working of the Purge in total, where people are sitting there and recording footage of the Purge to prosecute people who commit crimes after the fact that the Purge finishes. And we can also see that how that failsafe is kind of falling apart in the I think it was the last Purge movie, which was called The Forever Purge, where people are trying to maintain the Purge after Purge Day or Purge Night, I guess. Yeah. So, I didn't watch the last movie through. I watched the first, I don't know, maybe half an hour of the Forever Purge. I've watched all the other Purges. I watched the first season of the television series, which is actually kind of hilarious because we're I wouldn't say I'm a big Star Trek buff, but the idea of the Purge actually stems from an episode of Star Trek, where they travel to a planet that is crimeless, because once every year they do an annual Purge, and it's I don't know.
Which was it? Is that TOS or is that Next Generation? I don't remember that one.
That's a really good question.
If I Google Star Trek Purge episode, it will probably tell me what it is. Okay, Google's directing me to the episode Return of the Archons, which is that's TOS. Season 1, episode 21. Yeah, I'm not remembering that one. But I don't remember all the episodes. Ooh, this is the episode before Space Seed. That's neat.
I mean, the original, the person who came up with the idea, Monaco, who wrote the script, based it on a road rage incident that him and his wife was involved in. It was told to be too un-American due to its themes of violence and gun control. Oh, wow. Which they definitely went the other way with that at the start of the I guess when you look at the first movie, the first movie is very very single budgeted essentially.
Yeah.
It was shot in a single house based around somebody trying to break into the house of Ethan Hawke. I can't remember his main character. Character's name. Ethan Hawke is James Sandon. Well, this is starting to feel like Colin Cody's called Cinema Cast film at this point in time while we're sitting talking about this. But yeah, it started out with a budget of $3 million and it went up to $9.1 million at the box office. I guess when we look into the politics behind the original plot of the first film, a political party called the New Founding Fathers of America are voted into office following an economic collapse and pass a law sanctioning the Purge, an annual event wherein all crime, including murder, is legal, and emergency services are unavailable for 12 hours. The United States, which of course it's based in America, is said to have become virtually crime-free with legal unemployment rates having dropped to 1%. I'm not going to say it's completely thinly veiled that like crime rate dropping and unemployment dropping down to 1% when you're like solely focusing on the lower class of society who are currently trying to purge to better themselves. Yeah, it's kind of like when I ask how, like, what would you do if you were stuck in a purge and your whole entire goal for one purge night is to get yourself out of like poverty levels. What would you do? Apart from like robbing a bank or like committing tax fraud, which I don't know the semantics of if you do your taxes on purge night, does it carry over into the next year? Or how do you justify like a looting and pillaging system?
Oh man, this Purge night has to be after tax season. Like, we can find
Oh
this out.
yeah,
Purge has like, hold on. Yeah, Purge has like it has to be after tax season. There's no way they'd be that dumb.
I mean, in my opinion, like if they didn't do the purge on what is it, Independence
Oh
Day,
fuck!
then it's kind of losing
No, they're idiots.
like flavor.
They're idiots.
Oh.
It's the March 20. It's March 21st to 22nd. That's before tax season.
Oh wow!
They're fucking idiots, morons. Yeah,
So, yeah,
of course you fucking file your taxes on Purge. Like, I guess you can shut down the tax filing system for that day, but like, fuck that. Yeah, no,
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, like the IRS just shut down that day. Like, there's no way.
Because I mean, yeah, the amount of like blue collar crimes that you could set up in the meantime, like you have a whole year to plot this. Like you could just start funneling money into your bank account via, like, I don't know, and then all of a sudden, like, just have money transferred into your account by the time like purge days ended. We also see a lot of like murder for hire going on in the first season of the Purge television series. So I mean, you could become a hitman for a night. My thought process would be to start an illegal gun selling business.
Yeah, maybe I do that. Because like,
and
yeah,
like discount
yeah, maybe
it.
you just like, maybe that's the night you like you import all the fancy European firearms that like the ATF won't let into the country. Like maybe that's the way you do it, because that would be a big thing actually. Because there's a lot of guns. There's like, from if you listen to some gun nerds who like the big fancy assault rifles, like there are just some European guns that like cannot enter the United States because they do have some gun laws, particularly revolving around like importation. It's one of the few. I think it's one of the few areas where like American gun laws are allowed to work, is that you can like ban the importation of certain weapons. So that's that's absolutely a thing. You just like take that night and like smuggle a bunch of FAMASas on.
Yeah, I was more so talking about just amounting copious amounts of guns over the course of a purge night, and then for the rest of the year, you just become a gun warehouse where you sell illegal guns for at a discount, of course. But like there's so many good ways to like just like exploit purge night, but all of a sudden like everybody on purge night is like, oh, I'm gonna start murdering, and like I'm only gonna murder the whole entire night away. Like it just feels.
I mean, there is
Would,
a
you-
point
would
to
you,
be said about like because you know what I did watch because this is the first time I watched any of these was for like when you told me we were doing this episode, and like I watched like I watched the second and third one. That's Anarchy and Election Year. Yeah,
yeah,
Anarchy and Election Year. And the thing that surprised me is like the lore of the Purge is like surprisingly kind of base, sort of, because like I mean these are movies that like they kind of know who the good guys and bad guys are. Like this is straight up just like, oh yeah, no, the new founding fathers are a bunch of like Republican Nazis, um, and the only ones that'll save us are like the Black Panthers and a bunch of revolutionary communists. And that
yeah.
sort of thing. It's great.
I think Kyle has brought up before. Not on this podcast. Kyle and Cody's called CinemaCast. You can find us anywhere. We just recently done a Running Man episode, and we talked heavily on the idea of like people being so angry and repressed that they tune into the Running Man to watch violence committed on like the massive scale, or the at least a televised scale is what I'm trying to get at. I don't know how many like first Purge movie, which wasn't the actual first movie. It's called the first Purge, which is kind of confusing, but it's like the fourth or fifth movie in the series. We actually see the implementation of the very first Purge, that happened on Staten Island, and people were being incentivized to sit there and purge, by being offered money, and they have to wear these weird uh like camera contact lenses, and then they're broadcasting it out to the the world so that people can see that the purge is clearly a success. Back when I guess the new founding fathers were just trying to get like a foothold in the political system, as probably not so thinly veiled throughout the series. If you have money in the purge system, you're pretty much golden, or you're set. But if you're poor and you've got like maybe like a handgun, you have to actually like strive to not die during the purge night. You see a lot of like apartment buildings are locked down, or stores are locked down. What were you saying there?
Oh no, okay. So this you actually remind me of something about like when we did that Running Man episode on the other show. I had said one of the things I didn't like about that premise, which is like I mean, same basic idea as Hunger Games. Honestly, like you get the idea, but like the thing something I said during that episode was like I don't really buy that this is like a thing that works. Like we never bring up that like I don't think those movies bring up often enough that like and maybe Hunger Games does. I haven't seen it, but that they bring up that they insist that this is a way to like solve issues and like people actually enjoy these shows. And I've always I said in that where like I think that's kind of like nonsense to a degree, at least in like our modern era. And this in the Purge, to its credit, like kind of just like agrees with me, is like yeah, this is bullshit. Like the entire thing's like sprung on by like there's like maybe like 40 actual like crazy people that actually enjoy this shit, and then a bunch of other guys that are just like not cooperating at all, like just do like that just hate it. Like I think it's brought up in one of them, I know that like that they had to bring the military in to like make the purge more dangerous because a lot of people were just using purge night to do like copious amounts of cocaine in public. Like that was like it's just like this isn't like the purge movies make it perfectly clear that this is not like the people doing purge stuff is not typical human nature.
Yeah.
Like people like don't like doing this. There are people that absolutely do it. Like they're around,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not like most people don't want to do it. They just want to lock up their houses and don't worry about it. And and frankly, as this is a totalitarian system, are like the points about this where they say like, oh, crime doesn't exist in the Purge universe. That could be entirely bullshit, and I think that's could easily be supported by the text of the film. Like like the new founding fathers, the government in this is like like a fascist state. They could absolutely be fudging those numbers.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
no, yeah, no. I kind of like that about this. It's I was surprised about how much I like the Purge movies I saw.
Yeah, and I mean there's so many like not so thinly veiled um like references to, yeah, there was a Black Panther guy, I think in the um
Anarchy, he was. I'm talking, or that's the
the
one I
yeah
mentioned.
the last Purge film that I seen, the Forever Purge, it had uh I do believe he was a Navajo Indian in the TV series who was talking. So it's always these marginalized groups that are being portrayed as like revolutionary leaders, and I mean for probably um very good purposes, is because of like these people are marginalized and also poor normally than, I mean, the average rich white man. So,
Yeah, no,
which is
it's
normally 95% of the evil base. Which I was gonna bring up the first season of the television series, where we get the people, like there was I think there was a person who's looking for his sister who was a part of a cult, who was going to sacrifice themselves on Purge Night. I can't remember how the cult leader was like using the Purge Night to like justify religious aspects of occultism. But basically, they were saying that it's like the purest form of love to give to somebody is to allow them to purge you on Purge Night, which is absolutely insane. Um, so we have that person. We have a person who's going up for a promotion who is basically sold into sex slavery for the night to be able to get a promotion. We've got the penultimate part of the series when crazy alt right podcast listener decides to just like kidnap 3 people to purge him because basically they were mean to him on the non-purge days, so he's gonna purge them on the purge night, which is like, I think, the duality of the alt right
yeah.
system. You've got like exploitation, and then all of a sudden you just got like batshit craziness. So I think it did a very good job of showing both ends of those spectrums.
Mm-hmm.
So
One kind of point
if
I
that
want
makes
to bring
sense.
up. Yeah, no, I get you. Yeah. A kind of a point I want to bring up is like the like multiple points in the series. It's just pointed out by everybody that like, yeah, no, this is like something to like fuck with the poor. I think that it's kind of this is something that's could be implemented as because it's America. You could like do this through like look at this through a critical race theory lens, which I mean that's a term that's been controversy, but I'll state it in its entirety. The critical race theory in its entirety is that sometimes racist actors will pass laws that disenfranchise the racialized minorities without needing to say that they're doing that implicitly, and usually that
Hmm.
involves doing it like disadvantaging a broader category, or even just like like just broadly messing with poor people, rather than like specifically messing with different minorities. Which, yeah, that's and like it is that's kind of what's happening here, and it's never like I don't know that we ever get too many like explicit like I mean I mean then again I'm full of it because I'm like yeah no like explicitly in the series like the new founding fathers are like an organization that has like a ton of Nazis in it. Like I think every like in most of the series there's like some Nazi goon in there that's doing
Yeah.
some of it. And yeah, no, and it's one of those and like it's probably the it's become a sort of way you do that sort of thing in the modern age because I mean let's just put it this way, when I said racist actors I was making a joke about Reagan,
Yeah.
but yeah
And I
no
love
because
the
like
the amount of people who try and disenfranchise like people for using like critical race theory as like an
yeah
explanation to why there's still racism in America, because people are always like, well, what are the laws that are currently still racist? You can't even name one anymore. Like, yeah, but it's not even about that anymore. It's like looking at how like the stepping stones of like how we've got from segregation to here, um, and like they'll try and use any excuse that they can throw at the books, like single mother households and stuff like that. But like one of the biggest stepping stones to generational wealth right now is being able to own a house. And early in the 1950s, uh, even if you did own a house, like you're first of all getting gentrified out at this point in time, but also you were redlined out of owning like nice property. And even if you did own a nice property, you're probably dealing with copious amounts of racism from your neighbors, um,
mm-hmm.
of people coming up to like an African American person or a black person in a white gated community and asking like, well, why are you here? And you're like, I live 2 blocks away from here. It's like that level of
Yeah
like I've been stopped in the street and asked like why I'm in Estevan, like
yeah
that type of thing.
yeah no I mean
Um,
what it comes down to is like what I'm trying to like kind of what I'm getting at with that is like my point is no racist is going every racist on earth is willing to spite black people if the, or like whatever racialized minority we want to talk about, they don't care about any poor whites so much that they won't do those things to mess with their preferred racialized minority. Like
mhm.
they don't like if you're a poor white in this scenario, like the rich racists don't care enough about you to like not get you caught in the crossfire. Like they've changed the Supreme Court as is like the 60s in the states is like willing to isn't willing to let you do precision racism nowadays. So
Mhm.
the thing that critical race theory is warning us about is that those same racists are just going to essentially throw a grenade at the racialized groups, and if it catches some poor white people or even some less poor, not so poor white people, it's not going to be a problem for them. Like,
Yes.
what do they care if like as long as they're keeping the racialized groups in check? What do they care if they actually accidentally catch some poor whites in the crossfire? And that's it, like it's actually a weirdly this new wave of policy is actually can actually be in a lot of ways more destructive to general society in a lot of ways, though like that's I mean that's hard to say for sure, but it does cause a new host of problems. I think it's like there was an example that John Oliver brought up on one of his last week tonights, where like when they had to integrate this public pool in I think Alabama, they had to integrate this brand new public pool, and the white population closed the pool rather than share it with the black community. They're very much cutting away these things that everyone uses because they don't want the black community to get a hold of them. And this is very much and this is the same thing. Like these guys mostly catching the like they've done enough specific laser targeted racist policy to like disenfranchise the African American community and all the other racialized groups. And now that they're at a disadvantage, you can just borderline mess with poor people and it'll basically get the same amount of shit done.
A good example of this, I think, would be even like 4 years ago when they were trying to implement into place voter laws that required IDs at the voting pool, which it was basically just pinpointing African American and Mexican people of Mexican descent, which I think was categorized as like with almost surgical precision that they were trying to like stop African American and people of Mexican descent from voting within the 2016 election, or maybe it was the 2020 election. One of those two.
Bit of both, I think.
Starting to blur. I'm getting old.
Yeah, no. There's also a big concern about that sort of thing about gerrymandering. Like gerrymandering today is just has the potential to be like infinitely more sophisticated than gerrymandering in the like 50 years ago. And like even like it's such a point, like it was a lot easier, like in a lot of ways a lot easier to gerrymander against the say the African American population back in those days because you had them all in one spot. But with these computer generated models, you can just be like, okay, if there's any points, you can just draw lines around any place with a greater than 10% population of African American people, and you can do that in a way that's way more sophisticated. You don't need, in order to keep power with gerrymandering, you don't need like hard and fast like segregation. You can just have in a really bad spot if like literal like you had like everyone perfectly distributed, like just every third house being of a different race, but that's probably just not gonna be like a reality that you have to deal with. Like people are not uniformly distributed between the things, and even then, even if they were, most like American cities, the demographic is not like 33% white, 33% black, 33% Hispanic, or whatever. Like it's not something you need to worry about. You can just be like, okay, this is where the Hispanics live. You can draw the line around there and get it in a certain way. It's actually really dangerous in a lot of ways, which is I always like back at like years ago I was like kind of against proportional representation as a way of deciding how representative seats were distributed, but I'm getting more warm toward it because of just how dangerously bad like sophisticated gerrymandering systems can get in the modern day. Like I think that's just maybe proportional representation is just a thing that needs to happen in order to counteract sophisticated gerrymandering. And I mean, yeah, sophisticated gerrymandering, you don't even need to make it a race thing. You just pick up like, okay, this is where the Democrats vote, which is just a margin of error better than just like, okay, black people generally don't vote for us. you can literally just go against the people that don't vote for you.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's super scary or whatever.
I guess the other topic I wanted to bring up to you, how far off are we from having the NRA just like moderately become the new founding fathers?
Uh I mean, NRA I think is in a bit of a bad spot, honestly. I think because I think like a lot of the it's starting to get a bit of exposed as like, okay, these guys are just like stealing a bunch of money from each other. Like I think like the NRA itself might just could just collapse. That's conceivable, maybe, or it would
Oh,
like
that
have
would
to
be
change
nice.
a bit. But yeah, no, a lot of like I think a lot of the NRA leadership has just been sort of embezzling. Yeah, embezzling is the word. But I mean, okay, I guess the question is like, is it possible you could get a new founding fathers party? As I guess really the question you're trying to get at here. I mean, really, it's just a matter of like the Republican Party just generally shifting in a direction. Like that's all there is to it. Like you're not gonna get like a third party in the United States just isn't going to develop. Like I don't think
Yeah.
it's. I think it's like the United States government is structured in such a way that like a third party can't emerge unless like literally like one of those parties like entirely collapses, which I don't know that the Republicans or the Democrats are quite going to do that. Like there are other places that have had that situation where like you had like a big political party and they were really dominant and then they just collapsed. But I don't know that that's going to happen in the states. I could be wrong, but yeah, I don't know. And maybe the answer to this is like what happens when Trump wins and he needs to leave power. Like if he wins his second term and then he needs to leave for a third term, like what happens? I think it's pretty clear they're not picking another
I think
guy.
that it really boils down to, yeah, what basically happens after the the 2024 election, which is it's going to be a rough couple of years. I think, at least in my opinion, if Trump gets back into power, I don't really see the states exactly going for
I
going much
straight up don't
better.
think. Yeah, no. Like I straight up don't think the current era of American politics ends until Trump is dead. Like I'm not saying that as like someone should kill him. I'm saying like the era of American politics we are talking about begins in 2015 when Donald Trump descends that staircase, and it will end when he is dead. Like that is just my call
Yeah,
right now. Like we'll like that once he dies, we're getting another chapter of the history book. Like that's how this is gonna roll out.
and even if we don't see Trump being elected in 2025, 2025 or 2024,
No,
when is the
this
election?
year.
Is it this year or
This year.
next year? Okay,
That's in November.
so okay, in 2024, like we can generally see how Trump is using his presidency to better himself.
Yeah.
He's made $160 million uh, in foreign money. I think foreign trade while he was in office. He's using his campaign to fund his legal battles up against, I don't know, I think it's 91 indictments currently.
Yeah, there's a bunch
We
of
are
them. It's
seeing
hard to.
him.
He does owe like the state of New York $400 million or something like that.
Oh, God.
But yeah, no, I just like. I mean, the next stage of like that's just my call. The next stage of American politics begins when Trump dies. Because I don't think like if he loses, he is going to run in 2028 again, and if he wins, we get to see what happens in 2028 when he needs to either resign or choose a successor or try to flout the rules.
Yeah, but I mean, like, what I was trying to say earlier was, like, it doesn't really matter if Trump's at the forefront anymore. We have such heavy Republican leaning people in positions in almost like every like from the Supreme Court to the I don't see how, first of all, anybody's gonna fill Trump's shoes, but I'm assuming somebody just as awful or even worse is probably gonna come along eventually. And the only real way to like combat it is for people to just vote. And I mean, you're gonna have to vote blue, which like I like Biden, but is he like the best candidate?
No, I mean, okay, so like here's the thing. I mean, this is a pretty big problem. Like, I mean, yeah, the question isn't about like whether or not the next guy is going to be more awful than Trump, because I kind of have this theory where like you like here's the thing about like the last two guys the Republicans hired to try to become president. We talked about John McCain and Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney? Mitt Romney. Like here's why they didn't win. They're not enough of an obvious dipshit to become the Republican president. Like, I mean,
so it's like Trump or bust is what you're saying.
Yeah, no, strictly speaking, name one Republican president who hasn't just been like an obvious dipshit. Maybe George H.W. Bush. Like,
I was going to definitely name which Bush? Bush Sr. or Bush Jr.?
Senior, I'm talking.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, are you talking about... yeah, he was definitely not a great president. Junior, at least. I don't know about Senior's politics too heavily. So...
I don't think I wouldn't say I like his politics. I just haven't seen like enough of his I haven't seen he's the one, like H.W. Bush is the one example of like a Republican president in the last 50, 70 years of a guy who's actually managed to rise to power off of another Republican president. Because historically, like big Republican runs end in like an immediate Democrat win. Because Nixon immediately gets replaced by, Gerald Ford, but Gerald Ford gets replaced by Jimmy Carter, and Bush Jr. gets replaced by Obama. H.W. Bush is the only one to come off like he rides the Reagan era high, which is something no other Republican candidate has managed to do in a long time.
Well, it also trying to relate this back to Canadian politics. It's like we've had so many like heavy conservative victories that like finally a liberal actually got back into power recently. Off of I think it was 8 years of Brad Wall, or maybe even more. Speaking of term limits, we don't have term limits here. Yeah, because we don't have term limits.
Like, I straight up just don't think Canada operates under the same like political patterns. Like, say what you will, like, historically, people obviously far right dipshits haven't been managed to become prime minister. Like, you maybe have a few Albertan premiers, but like most, and like maybe I don't know, maybe Mo. Maybe that's just because I'm an adult when he's around, but like a lot of conservative victory, like Stephen Harper's kind of like a moderate in that sort of sphere. Like, you don't like Canadians didn't want to elect like a far right guy in the 2000s, and usually they want like Canadian conservatives are a lot better about sticking to fiscal conservatism and ignoring the social conservative aspects of their party. And the ones that have wanted to go more socially conservative have not done as well on the federal level. That could always change, but this is just like, we do not exist under the same patterns. Stephen Harper is a very different beast than George W. Bush. Say what you will. I'm not saying he's good, but he is a very different.
But that's what I'm trying to say is we are not seeing political reform because political reform is never getting taken to its full extent. We get the United States, you vote Democrat, and you get about 4 years of a Democrat, and like shit hits the fan, and they go, well, it's all the Democrats' fault, and then you go straight back to a Republican. That's what I'm trying to say. Is here in Canada we see a lot of conservatives get into power, and then the liberals get into power, and then shit hits the fan, and then all of a sudden everybody's like, well, we need to go back to conservative. Like, we're not seeing the fullest extent of what the liberals are trying to do, because they're cleaning up the conservative mess for the last 8 years, and we're never hitting that period of prosperity between conservative handover and liberal like being brought into full effect, in my opinion. But the good thing about it is we're starting to see a little bit of Biden's like prosperity coming into fact. He has record jobs. He alleviated some of the student debt crisis that's been going on in the United States. He's doing a lot of good, and like, it's hard for the like Biden naysayers to say, hey, he's doing bad anymore, because we're starting to see his uptick. And I'd like to see what another 4 years of Biden would look like instead of another 4 years of Trump, because Trump had also a political high from the Obama era, and it went downhill ever since he got into power, and is continuing to downtick while he was in power.
I mean, there's also like the other thing that's different about like Canadian conservatism is like the Canadian Conservative Party historically is a lot less stable than the Republican Party. Like conservative, like there are like, I mean, the Conservatives spent the '90s like imploding a little bit, like post Mulrooney. Like you have two conservative parties, and like they have to re-merge, which is where you get Harper. And also, like, I mean, even look at like conservatives will team up when they figure they need to, but sometimes they do just like explode on themselves. Because I mean, historically, like the further right guys want to be in like the further right party, and the further right guys can't win a Canadian election or haven't.
Well, what is it right now? It's the PCP, the Progressive Conservative Party, and then there's the Buffalo Party, which so there's a lot of off-branded third-party like conservatives. So
yeah, which is why a lot of guys on the left kind of like cheer those creations on, is because like half the time when the conservatives do that, it just causes their entire thing to fucking explode. Like that's that's what happened in the '90s and in the federal level. It's what happened when we had the NDP in Alberta for 5 minutes. Like it, because the separate conservative parties kind of shat the bed, and then they had to re-merge because that was the only way to get anywhere. But
it's the Manitoba experiment right now, where we have NDP leadership in Manitoba, that I'm really waiting to see the full extent of how Manitoba goes, and maybe we can start shifting to orange rather than solid blue throughout Canada, because I think the Sask Party is blue, Alberta is blue. I don't know about Vancouver. I think Vancouver might still be NDP along with
Vancouver,
Manitoba.
I think, is currently NDP on provincial level. But yeah, no, that's always the thing, is because like, I mean, in a lot of ways the Liberal Party is kind of like it's kind of terrible, but the NDP is never big enough to like take over, except for that brief glorious moment. But that's behind us now, sadly.
Our last chance was Layton.
Yeah, and then he got cancer. Yeah, that sucked.
Yeah.
Anyway, were we okay? I had one more point about like because that was a whole conversation. Okay, do I think the American founding fathers could emerge and like something similar to the American founding fathers could emerge. I mean, ask me again in 5 to 8 years.
Yeah.
Let's see how this Trump thing plays out.
So many people are currently comparing like voting for Donald Trump to being in a cult. So I mean, it's not completely unheard of that we get something that like.
Oh
generally,
yeah, that's
like,
totally fair.
Like we saw an insurrection at the Capitol.
I mean, the big difference between like Trump and guys that are sort of similar to him and sort of scale, like I think he's kind of got like the part where the Hitler comparison ends with Trump is that I don't think like Trump is definitely not willing to go to jail. Adolf Hitler absolutely was willing to go to jail. Like that's the difference.
No, I think he did go to jail.
Trump?
No, Hitler.
Yeah, no, Hitler's willing. That's my point. Hitler's willing to go to jail. Trump is definitely not willing.
He did go to jail.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah. Trump.
Did Hitler not go to jail?
Hitler went to jail for a bit.
Okay, I'm not completely crazy. So did Mussolini.
Yeah.
Yeah, another fascist dictator that we should probably lump these people into.
I gotta talk. Yeah, I could do a Mussolini episode. But anyway, yeah, no, Hitler. Hitler went to jail in 22, like in the beer hall push or whatever year that was. I think it was 22. But yeah, no, I mean that was basically fake jail. Like he went to jail, but it was kind of fake jail.
Yeah.
It was, yeah. No, like he got to hang out with all his buddies and like write dumb political manifestos. Like it was a whole. But yeah, no, I don't even think Trump would be willing to do that. Although also,
I like the.
I don't think they have that level of fake jail in the modern day.
I'm sorry, but oh yeah. There is no way in fuck that like Trump gets anything bigger than I think I would say a medium security prison.
And I think that would make him absolutely miserable too. Like he is petrified of that. Even.
Or minimum security prison or house arrest. I love the idea of, first of all, Trump being in prison, but also the fact that some like Secret Service agents are gonna have to like uproot their lives for like the next, I don't know, however long his sentence is, to escort Trump around in prison. But I was gonna bring up earlier. I was gonna bring up the Project 2025 again. I think we talked about this before on the podcast. Of like a manifesto for the Republican Party to continue to seize power within the United States that basically lays out how that they're going to get another Republican nominee elected in 2025. So we kind of have a good understanding of the 2025 game plan. However, like it's going to be interesting to see how it's going to be implemented post-Trump, if there will be a post-Trump, if they're not just going to completely and entirely seize power at that point in time and actually become a fascist dictatorship. But
yeah, no, okay, my final point, which is kind of just, I think, like, the thing I wanted to bring up is, like, the question is, could the Purge really happen? Like, could you actually, like, pull off something like this? I mean, sort of no. The example I kind of want to bring up here to like compare this to is like, so I was looking at it. I'm looking at that question and I'm thinking, okay, what's something else that the government has done historically, or a government has done historically, that seems really silly, but got into place? And I'm kind of looking at prohibition. Like we're talking like like alcohol prohibition, because that's kind of a crazy thing when you think about it. Because, I mean, it's this weird thing. Everyone like alcohol use is like, I wouldn't say universal, but like very common.
Yeah,
like I think most people do, like most adults do drink, even if they don't like drink a lot. Like I mean, there's like obviously the poorest people that like drink, but most people do drink a little bit.
In moderation, yes.
Yeah, moderation, or at least like in like on occasion, like socially or whatever, in a healthy amount. And like that's not like not true of the pre-prohibition era either. Like if anything, alcohol abuse is kind of worse in that era, because yeah, and that's kind of the point. Is it's this weird thing where like, yeah, there actually was a lot of problems that needed to be dealt with. Like there's a lot of alcohol related problems that do need to be dealt with, and a lot of them are sort of dealt with prohibition. Like there is some of this. There were some improvements to the system that resulted as a result of prohibition. Like when I did my studies on Canadian prohibition, it was found that a lot of pre-prohibition liquor was hideously unhealthy, like hideously unrefined, lots of impurities. Some of it just basically indistinguishable from like really dangerous moonshine. A lot of presence of wood alcohol, which is something that makes you blind, or can make you go blind. Which yeah, which is kind of why they don't want you making like bathtub moonshine, is because a lot of it has a lot of big danger of being unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And like that was a lot more widespread. Obviously, like you could solve that problem with like implementing the FDA or whatever, which sort of happens because of prohibition. Is my point. Yeah, no, like liquor gets a lot more clean. There's a lot more better regulations about its production that happen afterwards. You're not going to buy something off the shelf that is obviously toxic in the same way that it was. And there's also just a bunch of like pre-prohibition, there's a bunch of like silly things you can do that end up getting kiboshed in that era. Like I know you used to be able to cash checks in bars.
Yeah.
Like that was a common practice. Like the bar would double as a bank, and then you'd cash guys would cash their checks and spend way too much money on booze before they left the bar, and that's a thing that you can't do anymore.
Oh wow.
Or at least there's Laris.
So
Yeah.
bringing this back to the Purge, because I didn't finish it. So the last Forever Purge results in the new founding fathers having dispatched troops. So basically, the new founding fathers start to self-implode. Forever Purgers are taking over America, and people are fleeing to Canadian and Mexican borders as refugees. So I like to see the final conclusion of how it kind of boils down to, out of the I think 5 or 6 Purge movies. I think we're 5
Yeah, no, the
in.
Purge is weird in that it has a really strange premise, but it's done like played completely consistently. Like there at no point is anyone in this franchise just like, okay, obviously this is going to be a thing that lasts forever. It's
Mhm.
something that basically collapses in like 20 years, which is entirely like understandable. That's an entirely realistic thing to happen after the unrealistic thing.
Yeah, and I think that once you put the lid on that pot, there's really like no like way for the new founding fathers to like regain control at that point in time. It's like one of those experiments that kind of did like, if it doesn't work out, then it falls apart.
And they were like doing something obviously crazy and it didn't work in the end. Like like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of things like you're making it work, and eventually it's not going, you can't make it work anymore. It's just going to end. Which yeah, kind of my point, kind of like with the prohibition thing is like it seems like a really strange thing to happen. Like it's super
Yes.
strange that was able to get off the ground, because it's something that like everyone did, and it's super weird that they ever thought of doing it. And like in Canada, some of it's attributed to like the first act of like, it happens basically in some of the first, like in tandem with the first elections where women can vote, and a lot of that was like like a lot of women were like really pissed about that like thing I mentioned about like people being able to cash checks at bar, because who gets a hold of the check when they're done work? The husband, because he's the only one that's allowed to work. And where is he going? And he's the only one that can cash the check because women can't have bank accounts. So he's got to go to a cash the check, and why isn't he going to go cash the check at the bar? And yeah, no, he can just do that. And that's sort of an aspect of it. It's kind of exaggerated. There were obviously a lot of men who were pro temperance, pro prohibition, but okay. So like getting back to my point, how did this happen? Well, I think the first thing we got to remember is the 1910s were a extremely volatile time, and I'm not just talking about World War II. I mean, one. I'm not just talking about World War One. We're talking about like, okay, the revolution, like the first major communist revolutions are happening. Fascism is going to be taking hold in Italy pretty soon. Women are getting the right to vote for the first time in Western democracy. There's a lot of other changes happening. There's a lot of lesser sung racial rights movements. It's sort of where a lot of really like there's a lot of good stuff happening and there's a lot of really bad stuff, and it's very much still a period where there's a lot of political censorship. Like half of Europe before World War One is still like using monarchs and have like hideous government censorship like you wouldn't believe. Like just as an example, do you know why they call it the Spanish flu?
I'm gonna assume because it started in Spain.
Nope. No,
Nope.
everyone. You see, the funny thing is, everyone was lying about how many people were getting the flu, and except for Spain. So Spain's out there posting the real numbers about how many people are dying of the flu, and everyone else is putting out fake fudge numbers. So Spain gets a reputation of being like especially bad for the flu. So they just call it the Spanish flu.
Oh wow.
Yeah, no. So that's how just rampant like government censorship and like control of the information is in that period of time. And like even like guys who you consider to be on the right side of history and to be like the heroes of this situation have to be like way more violent than you'd probably be comfortable with in a modern movement. Because I mean, there's no chance in hell you're getting any sort of political change without violence in that period of time in a lot of places. Whereas nowadays with democracy, you can get a lot more, do a lot more political change without needing to do violence, and that's very much not the case in the 1910s. Unions are a lot more violent too. You do have several instances of just gunfights between mine owners and unions, because that's the only way the problem's gonna get settled, because there's no like legal framework for like a union to negotiate with the with the company. And just like it's just this incredibly volatile time in political history. And I think that kind of brings us to why prohibition was coming about in this period, is because it's doing something, and it's not the most extreme thing. So the guys who are in power, they can do this. It doesn't really threaten their power, but it is doing something. There is going to be change, which also, like, it's 1910. You haven't had 90 years of prohibition prohibition of drugs failing. It's like maybe it'll work. It's 1910. You don't know. Like, obviously, there's probably some guys who are just like, okay, guys, this isn't going to work. Come on. But you don't know. You don't know until you try. Maybe it'll work. Maybe that is the salt. Maybe banning hard liquor is the thing that'll actually make society perfect. Who knows? You don't. How we do, because we're in the future. But they don't know. Gotta try something. That's all I have.
Yeah, I think for the most part that's it for me. It gets to the other point that no, I guess we've already actually talked about that. The rising up of a political pushback, and I'm kind of forgetting the disconnect between election year. Maybe I'm missing a movie.
Yeah, I don't know how this. Yeah, I don't know what happens after election year, so I've only seen the 2 movies.
I think she gets voted into power, and like her whole thing was she's gonna like cancel the Purge, and then I forget how, because I think the next film is the sequel, so I don't know how they got back
Is the next
into
one Forever Purge?
power. I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've got the first Purge, then we have Anarchy, then we have Election Year, and then we have the first Purge, which is a prequel, then we have the Forever Purge, and then we also have an Untitled 6 film coming out to be the last in the series, stating that it will be a real cool ending, how we take this home. Yeah, so I have no clue. Just generally where it goes after election year, so.
It's a weirdly realistic series, I find. Weird premise, but like they follow it through to like a logical conclusion in a lot of ways, which is great science fiction, honestly.
And I guess the other one last thing that I was trying to bring up, in the second season of the Purge television series, from what I've seen, it takes place with a lady who is charged with sitting there and watching like Purge footages to review whether or not something illegal has happened in terms of the Purge. And I think there was a couple of rules set out within the initial broadcasts. Certain firearms are not allowed, and of course you can't kill anybody after the Purge whistle. So her job is literally to sit there and watch for people who are murdering after the sirens, or I guess before the sirens, which basically means that
in the playground after the bell rings.
Yeah, essentially. But basically, what I'm trying to say is, at this point in time, that means the Americans just basically a giant surveillance state, and they're using the Purge, to justify having a surveillance state within the United States.
Yeah, that's just the thing that sort of happened, isn't it? Yeah.
Not cool, but
yeah,
I guess that's about it.
What were we wanting to do next? Did you want to do one of yours, or should I pick one?
We can alternate here.
Want to do a short one? Want to just do one on like a episode of Star Trek?
As long as it's not the Purge episode. Yeah.
No. I want to do. Hold on, I can figure this out. What's it called? It's a TOS episode. I want to do. We're gonna do. Oh, actually, it's weird because it's literally the episode we mentioned was season 1, episode 21 of the season 1, episode 21. We're gonna do an episode on season 2, episode 21. An episode called Patterns of Force, which if you know, we know. If you know, you know. But yeah. I think that's what's going to be your next episode, and you literally just got to watch a episode of Star Trek for that.
Fair enough. I guess it's generally cool to see what sort of world building you can do in a single 45-minute episode of a TV show, compared to something like this, which has spawned 2 TV series and like 5 movies. So that'll be really cool to look at.
And it's the original series, so it's absolutely a standalone episode.
Yeah, like it's almost reminiscent, in my opinion, of C.S. Lewis, where you get to see like a whole world building within like one snippet of a book, essentially. I'll bring that up a little bit more later, but
yeah. Well, thanks everyone for watching. I'd like to thank Scribblejay for making the nice artwork, which you can see on screen if
Oh
you're
yeah.
watching. Yeah, very much appreciated. Great work. See you guys soon with our little examination of patterns of force.
Okay.